Well, people ask me all the time, how do I factor? Well, that's kind of a complicated question. So let me tell you. There are two main things. Now, there are several things, but there are two primary things that are covered a lot with factoring. And it's greatest common factors and quadratic expressions, which normally are trinomials. So really briefly, while I'm talking about the second one, it's not as important necessarily, and it's not the first thing you look for, but I'm still going to briefly hit this while I'm here. For example, you might have something that says x squared minus 400. That is not a trinomial, it's obviously a binomial, but what I really have is no x's in the middle. And we factored a little bit like this before. I need two numbers that give me 400, that multiply to give me 400, actually negative 400. And when I add them together, I will get 0. In other words, I need two numbers that will multiply to give me negative 400 that added will cancel out. They have to be the same thing. Now in this case, 400 is a perfect square, which is beautiful, it works great. The square root of 400 is 20. If you had 20 $20 bills, you'd have $400. Now, the 20s have to be opposite signs, and if I was to FOIL this, negative 20x and positive 20x cancel out. It's conjugates. We've done this. These are conjugates, and the outside and inside cancel. To prove the point, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to try to do it in 10 seconds or less. X squared minus 20x plus 20x minus 400. And again, boom, boom, they're gone. Notice the conjugates. Those cancel, gives you 0. Okay? Some quadratic expressions aren't nearly that cut and dry. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to just pick a couple examples from the quiz that I have, which of course is different from yours, and we're going to go from there. Now, for example, my number 5, oh, I don't like that number 5. Here we go. There's a good, big, manly number 5. Number 5 is 4x squared plus 80x plus 384. Mr. Reader, I'm confused. No, you're not. No, you're not. Step 1. Look for a GCF. Is there a greatest common factor that is in all of these things? Is there a number or variable that can divide out of every term? And the answer, of course, is yes. Every term here is divisible by 4, so we will divide 4 out of every term. X squared, 20x, and hold on, I'm going to do that in my head, 96. There we go. Step 1 is done. We looked for and factored out our greatest common factors. Step 2, factor quadratic expressions, meaning this is quadratic, so let's start factoring it the way it needs to be factored. There's a 4. Don't forget your 4, don't drop him off. He's sitting there. Okay? Two numbers multiply to give me x squared, they must be x times x. Here's the tricky part. Two numbers multiply to give me 96. That when added together will give me 20. Okay, now sometimes this one's kind of hard to think your way through, so I'm going to just sort of go through this one. Two numbers multiply to give me 96. I like to start counting. 1 times 96 is 96, but it's not 20 when you add them. 2 goes into 96 48 times. No. 3 goes into 96 32 times. 4 goes into 96, 20, give me a second, I got this, 24 times. I almost said this was right. Here's why I almost said that. 4 times 24 is 96. 4 and 24 subtracted from each other will give me 20, but I need them to add and give me that. So we'll keep going. 5 doesn't go into it, 6 goes into it because, actually I know 6 goes into it because 2 and 3 both go into it, so 6 has to. Just saying. 6 goes into that 6 times. 16 times. Let's see, 7 does not go into it. 8 goes into it. This might be it. I think it's 8 times 12. It is. 8 times 12. Found it. 8 times 12. 8 times 12 multiplies to give me 96. 8 plus 12 is 20. We just found it. Plus 8, plus 12 in no particular order. That's the final answer. It is completely factored. By the way, you've heard this word before. I hope you have. Prime. Numbers that are prime, like the number 5, that's an ugly 5. The number 5 is prime because nothing divides into 5 except 1 in itself. These are prime factors. X plus 8 cannot be factored any further. X plus 12 cannot be factored any further. 4, well, clearly the number 4 is not prime, so we could put 2 times 2, but we're not going to go there. But these sets of parentheses, these quantities, are prime. Okay, number 6, I am not going to say very much about it, but I will say that your greatest common factor involves a variable, and then you're left with a quadratic that can be factored. Number 7. You're going to have to reduce that, but first you have to factor. As with any other fraction, you're going to have to factor before you can reduce. Let me show you. I'm going to pull out the most basic example ever. This is one of the first things you learned when you were reducing fractions. Somebody told you this and you thought, well, that makes sense. Basic fraction, 1/2, right? And then your teacher was like, well, if I have 2/4, I also have a half, right? Of course, because 2 is really 2 times 1, and 4 is 2 times 2, and then your teacher said, oh my gosh, let's cross those out. We'll divide those out and we get 1/2. Duh, right? Duh. So here's my number 7. My number 7 says 2x squared plus 10x divided by x squared plus 14x plus 45. Oh, what's that? I have to factor it. Before I can do anything else, I have to factor it. So, step 1 when factoring, look for a GCF. What do both of these terms have that can evenly divide out? Both of these terms are divisible by 2 and x. Every term in the numerator has an x. Your greatest common factor is 2x. Meaning you're going to divide 2x from x squared. Leaves you with an x. 10x divided by 2x is 5. No x. Again, if I was to factor out 2x, I would divide them out of each term. Another way of thinking of it is when I'm done, I better be able to distribute and get what I had to start with. Denominator. There is not a GCF, but I know I can factor. 2 numbers multiply to give me 45. They will add together and give me 14, 9, 5. That's it. Found it. 9 and 5. I could have turned it around, but as long as I have something in the numerator that I also have in the denominator, as long as I have a factor in the numerator and the denominator, they can divide out. And in case you care, x plus 5 goes into itself 1 time. That's the way my algebra teacher used to show me. That really means this is 2x times 1. Well, that's just 2x. And then x plus 9 times 1, well, that's just x plus 9. And here's the final answer.